Aaron, can you hear us?
Yes, I do.
Okay, sweet. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us for day 2 of iDesign. So this is going to be a panel on international design. And so we have a couple wonderful professionals here who are going to kind of talk about their experiences with either design education outside the United States or professional experience working in design outside the US. So with that, I'll pass it on to Zane, our moderator, who's going to introduce our panelists, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you to the CISA team for arranging everything. Everything's been great so far, so looking forward to tomorrow as well. Yeah, so most of you know me. I'm Zain. My background, my international background is I'm originally from Saudi Arabia, and that's where I got my undergrad in graphic design. And after graduating, I worked in a boutique design firm in Saudi Arabia, where we worked on a number of different projects, from branding to typography, type design, font and type design. And, I got to dabble in a number of different projects, and that was great. The designing aesthetic that the company went for was mainly how to modernize classical Arabic calligraphy, and I kind of adopted that style. And they were very famous for that. They were kind of the pioneers in how to kind of, modernize Arabic calligraphy. And so after working there a couple of years, I moved on to work as a in-house graphic designer in a petrochemical company where I did a lot of technical things, maintaining visual ground guidelines, all the visual communication stuff that needed to adhere to a certain kind of standard. Then I was a little, that work was nice. It paid very well, but I was more interested in, kind of exploring the other avenues of graphic design. And so I did a lot of freelance work on my own, and continued to do freelancing until moving to the United States. And so, yeah, and since moving here, I've maintained that clientele, and it's been like a snowballing effect where, one client refers me to another. It's been slow, steady work. And I've always been interested in packaging, product design, and that's why I decided to pursue this degree. And I'm really excited here to sit among the panel. We have Eric Bransall and Suchan Fang, and joining us online, we have Aaron Weinberg. And I'm going to pass the floor on to them to kind of talk about their experiences, and then, allow the room for some questions, more of a discussion kind of thing. We can start with you, Eric.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. And I started design in Toronto, Canada. I studied a Bachelor's of Industrial Design there. Finished that in 2009. And then went on to work for kind of I don't want to say a traditional design firm, but what you kind of expect a design firm to be. I worked for one in Toronto called Shape Products, and we worked on a lot of, funny enough, we worked on a lot of products that were geared towards women, and the design team was primarily men. So it was a kind of a strange atmosphere, but it was fun. And, worked there for about 2 years. We had clients like Omedix, Revlon, Sharper Image. I don't have Sharper Image, just makes products, but after about 2 years, returned to Trinidad because I just wanted to spend some time with my family, and started working at a local design and fabrication shop that did primarily architectural restoration, so preserving old buildings, taking some of their features off and remaking it in more durable materials, and doing a lot of custom work for events, things like that. It started kind of moving more towards CNC manufacturing and less sort of injection molding, those types of manufacturing methods. Kind of did that for a while, and then got asked to join this packaging manufacturer in Trinidad. They wanted to start a design department where they can build custom displays for retail settings, like POP displays. And they wanted displays that could be shipped flat, kind of like IKEA furniture around the Caribbean and Latin America. So they asked me to kind of build out that department. So I did and ran it for about 3 years, co-ran it. And then I moved to San Diego with my wife. She's a physician. She was training in San Diego, so we moved there. Joined a architectural firm in San Diego. And we did a lot of again architectural details, but more modern feature walls, sculptural elements in commercial and retail buildings. And then we moved to Houston last year, in the middle of the pandemic. Yeah, it's kind of a little challenging to find steady work in the middle of the pandemic. So to kind of supplement that, I've actually been doing TaskRabbit. That was kind of interesting. And then recently I joined this landscaping firm that's a startup, and they do mainly native plants. So their kind of thing is turning backyards into mini eco reserves. So doing a lot of their hardscaping design, like arbors and pathways and their promotional materials and things like that. So
Very nice. What brought you to Houston?
my wife's work again,
Okay.
yeah, she got a good job in the medical center, and
Perfect.
I have a little bit of family here, and Houston is one flight from Trinidad. So those three things kind of made us move there.
That's what we have in common. My husband was also doing his training here, but very interesting. Does anyone have any questions for them? I'm wondering, I have a question for you. How do you think your experience or your education helped you when you moved back to Trinidad?
I hate to say this, but I feel like it made me sort of unique in a sense, because I'm sure even here, you guys struggle with trying to explain what industrial design is for people. I'm sure you get that question all the time. What is industrial design? And when I came back, it was pretty unknown there too. And it kind of opened up a lot of opportunities, because I didn't feel like I was competing for jobs when I went to pitch my skills to people. It was kind of like, they were like, what is this? And I had to show them. And so, but a lot of it was kind of selling myself and proving that I had something that they could use. And I think that the design education was a good blend of theoretical and things like human-centered design, but also very hard technical skills like illustrating and rendering and those kind of things. So when you go to sell yourself, you have that benefit of being able to see, like, I can do this, and then you show them, and then it's proof that you can do it, So
Also, maybe we can talk about your background, Suchan, and what brought you here to Houston.
All right, so yeah, my name is Sultan, and I'm from People Republic of China. And that's also where I acquired my degree of Bachelor of Engineering in Industrial Design. And during that experience, I had like several internships with local design teams. They are working on some of the product design, like whatever the contracts they get from their surveys. And after that, I decided to like take a graduate study. And yeah, I had an admission here, and I got approved. And I just got enrolled here, but last year because of the pandemic, I was bored. And yeah, this is my first semester to be in campus. So yeah, it's a really pleasure to be in this room. Thank you.
How has your experience been so far? Like coming to Houston?
Oh, it's been great. Like I talked with several students. It's a very unique experience because it's quite different with what I had in China. Because when we talk about design, it's not only about the design itself is not only about sketch, modeling, or something like that. It's also about the interpretation of the context of the local culture. So in China, we have different points of view of design. So in particular, we regard design more like art or crafting. So yeah, so and our curriculum in college is quite different with what we have here. So I would like to say, yeah, this just so interesting if we compare those two kind of experience here. So.
And then we'd like to move on to you, Aaron, online. Let us know your background.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Could be a little louder.
All right, I'll try to talk a little louder. Is that better?
I think no, they're gonna. Can I move it up?
I'm not sure if it needs to go up on here. Uh, Here, try speaking again.
Hello?
Any ideas?
Can you guys hear them okay? I don't know, I can hear.
Okay, try again. One more time.
Is it better now?
Yes. Okay, awesome.
Good. All right, perfect. All right, well, my name is Aaron Weinberg. I'm actually a recent, Houston resident. I moved here in June. And I graduated from a school called Art Center in Pasadena, California, back in 2006. During that time, I also had the opportunity to be part of a really cool exchange program between Art Center and an MBA program called INSEAD, which is one of the top MBA schools. At that time, it was in France. And after graduating, I started working for a design consultancy. I did about 40 products for Target. It was a very specific project. And then about a year after graduating school, I got a senior design position at Cisco, which I came on as one of the first product designers in the US division. And then during my time working at Cisco, basically from 6 p.m. till 4 a.m. every single night, I developed a product, a business on my own, which was designer toys that were also mini speakers. I built that business. Within 6 months, I sold it to about 13 different countries and eventually sold that company off. Out of that, I got a client called deadmau5. So I don't know if some of you are familiar with him. deadmau5 was through EMI and Capitol Records, and my client was EMI Records, which was out in the UK. And through that, I developed IND Group, which is my own design consultancy. I did about 100 different products within that consultancy. I set up a company, an office in China to do product sourcing, product development, manufacturing, and all those kind of things. And after a few years, I decided to kind of change positions and started a more of a web tech company in the healthcare space. Raised money from investors, tried to take that off, and it was a hard grind, and it didn't end up going anywhere. Took some time off, did a lot of consulting work for different clients, and then eventually I started my own company again back in 2017, which was actually, it's called Levi, and it's basically was one of the first products on the market that helped mothers improve milk flow for mothers. It was a massager for breastfeeding. And what ended up happening is about back in August, I just sold the company. And so that's where I am today, here in Houston.
Amazing. I'm very curious as to how you came up with that product. As a mother of two, I know the struggle women have in breastfeeding. And
right. So it wasn't my personal experience, since I can't breastfeed, but my wife, when we had our firstborn, we had a lactation consultant. My wife had a lump in her breast, and we're like, we don't know what the hell this is. So we're, luckily we had a lactation consultant come over that day, and she told us that it's a clogged duct, and if we don't get, help pass it, it could turn into mastitis, and that's like flu and all these other complications. And then I discovered how many other women deal with these issues every single day. And that sort of developed into what I developed was called the lactation massager. And it was the first product in terms of that category in the market. So I had to build a new category in the breastfeeding market, which was part of the challenge, but part of the benefit as well.
Yeah, I've seen that product in Target, so it's amazing. Does anyone have any questions for our panel? If not, I can kind of guide the discussion towards like my first question, which is how do you think your international experience has benefited your role as a designer in general and your current position? If anyone?
I'm happy to start.
Yeah.
I think the world is so small today that it doesn't matter whether it's international or not. I think there's a lot of talent everywhere, and the ability to connect internationally is easily as accessible as connecting with somebody like as we are today. And so when you view that, you're ending up using the best abilities of the resources that you find anywhere in the world. I've had multiple opportunities where I've had a project for a client that was way beyond my technical skill, and I brought in engineers and sound engineers and other people from Japan and Germany and different countries. Right now I'm working with a developer in Budapest, right? So I think the key is that we have it's so easy to connect with people and with businesses. When I started both of my businesses, the first thing I did was I looked for distributors internationally, so they would help my business grow while I was focused on the US market. So I think having a mindset of stepping outside of just your city, state, country really opens up for a lot more capabilities for growth.
Yeah, definitely. The world is flat and we're so close. I mean, we're all sitting here in one panel from completely different backgrounds. Does anyone have anything to add on to that? How about you?
Oh, okay. So yeah, like I said, it's really interesting to compare the design in the different interpretation from the different cultures, and in particular because my undergrad program was under the School of Mechanical Engineering. So yeah, I learned so many things from the mechanical things, and besides, China is known as a world factory, right? So there's a lot of the factories of all kind of brand. Like I remember I've been like intern in Walkman factory and learn about how those cars are truly produced during that process. So I think it's a really interesting experience and background for me, and I carry this to this program, and I can just absorb knowledge and the culture is here, and I can just integrate them together and help me to gain a deeper understanding towards the design issue. So I think that's what it benefits me.
So John brought up a great point in his introduction about culture, and I think that does play a big part of the design process, especially when you're designing internationally or somewhere else or anywhere. I mean, like in Trinidad, I learned one way to do design in Toronto, which was, I guess, like a very North American kind of school of design, and then going back to Trinidad, where it's relatively unknown in that kind of strict dogma or whatever. Yeah, a lot of times I played more of a role of a facilitator rather than someone like with this creative genius coming up with ideas. It was more kind of like listening to people and making people feel like they're creative too, and they have a say in the solution and the process. And I guess it kind of strips away your I don't know, your sort of feeling that you gatekeeper of some sort of knowledge that everybody else has.
Which actually is a perfect leeway to my next. Like, have you faced any challenges throughout, like, you know, moving back and forth. You know, I know you were mentioning like you had some challenges coming here because of COVID, but are there any other challenges that you think you're facing? Or any misconceptions or something like, I don't know, like if you're,
Right, like, first thing, of course, is the language barrier.
yes,
And besides that, I don't think it's like challenging. It's just you have to adapt to the environment that you are not quite familiar with. Like for example, when I was an undergrad, we emphasized more on the appearance and all the theories about the appearance, like the semantic things. And yeah, in China, education is all about the theory oriented. So, but here we are doing more practical things. So it's kind of like a shifting here, but I feel like I think it's quite okay, and like it's not very hard to comprehend everything. It's just to shift your shift what you value here. Just something like that.
yeah, like for me, one of the challenges that I faced is, you know, when I graduated with the graphic design from, I think I was like we were the fourth class to graduate, and it was a very new industry. People used to go to printing offices to get their designs done. And so there was a huge demand for, you know, good graphic designers, but we were taught in such a North American kind of way, but we had to practice differently. And so it was kind of hard to kind of take that knowledge and try to shapeshift it to suit our culture and our kind of the audience that we were designing for. But then you come here and like you have extreme amount of talent, and it's very hard to kind of stand out. So yeah, that's another challenge that I face. How about you, Aaron? How have you, I know you did mention that you did this exchange program in France. Did you kind of face a challenge when you went there as a student, or?
It was a pretty international group of people. So it was actually pretty easy to get, to get along with everybody. And it was an English focused school. So it wasn't that bad. I think, of course, starting up a new business, setting up an office in China, for example, starting up new relationships, being the first time going to China to set up, try to figure out how to, start manufacturing, for example, you definitely have to take into consideration the cultural differences and learning how to communicate properly. I think it's gotten much better since when I started, but it's always something to be conscious of when working with a new person in a different part of the world is sort of those cultural differences.
Yeah, and another, I'm not sure, but we had like this portfolio workshop yesterday, and they were talking about how to kind of tailor your portfolio. I feel like for me, I had to kind of tailor out most of the work that I did because it wasn't really relevant to, or all of the Arabic logos that I was doing wouldn't really speak much to the audience here. So have you, any of you like struggled kind of catering or tailoring your portfolio to suit different, culture or country in general?
I think so. I mean, a lot of the brands that I worked with before were regional brands from the Caribbean, so they were unknown. So kind of using those as like clout and applying for a job in the US was, I don't know, it's hard to say if that was a fraud strategy or not, but it kind of seemed like it was. Being sort of an unknown person, totally unknown to the US, unknown to San Diego, unknown to Houston, has its challenges, we don't have any connections. And so, yeah, this kind of, sometimes some of the projects have to be kind of made more generic and less, not so much have a place, belong somewhere specific.
Yeah. which I think is sad, because we should kind of highlight these things, I think, yeah. Having to filter ourselves to kind of all mesh and blend well.
And that was only my experience. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like that is how things are.
Yeah.
It's just what I experienced.
How about when you applied for this program, did you have to kind of cater or curate your portfolio in a certain way? Or-
Right. So, like I mentioned, in China, we focus more on the visual effect of your final outcome. So, if I like to make a portfolio for a job in China, we more focus on the cool renderings, just to give them a full spread of the renderings, because they don't really value the background of your story. And so, but if you want to apply for a program in university or art college, they want to know how do you reach to the final outcome. They would like to hear your background stories and how you do research. And yes, it's more about the whole process here. So yeah, in order to fit this need, I would like to transfer to focus more on how the idea was generated, how I developed this idea to my final outcome, and why is it the reasonable way to conduct this. Yeah, it's more like that.
And then I'm gonna kind of ask one last question and leave the floor for discussion and questions. How do you see the future of like your backgrounds or international design impacting the community, like the design community in Houston in general? Like, because I know a lot of people were saying that, usually people graduate and move into other, Austin, or how do you see like, this opportunity kind of being honed in here? Who wants to kind of go for it?
I'll jump in. So, I mean, the benefit of COVID is that it created a much more a remote way to connect with other companies and brands. So you could potentially stay in Houston and be anywhere and work with somebody anywhere in the world, which is one of the biggest benefits. The downside, of course, is you're missing out on that collaboration, the brainstorming, and the prototyping facilities of some design firms, which would be a slight difference. But you could set up and work with clients anywhere in the world. The biggest thing that I'm sort of interested in terms of Houston is I think there's a lot of room for growth in the healthcare space. I'm actually working right now with a medical device company. The technology is based in Israel, but the CEO is based here. So I'll be working with him. And so there's a lot of room for medical device development and design. And so it's a fresh market here. I think there's a lot of room for growth and the ability to sort of create more opportunities in Houston, which seems pretty exciting, I think.
When you were talking about your background, you didn't mention what brought you to Houston, and I just want to know how did you end up here?
Yeah, I didn't move here for any specific design purposes. California is a very tax-heavy state, so that's pretty much the reason. But I also have family here, so it was and kids, so it's a very family-friendly city.
True. So anything else you'd like to add to that, Eric or Sutan? With the opportunity you see in Houston?
Yeah, I mean, Aaron brought up a great point that I know about the medical industry here, and part of this whole conference is about finding opportunities where maybe outside of like traditional design opportunities, and I think that there's a lot of room in Houston for that. Sure, I mean, there's so much industry here, so many people there, it's such a sprawling city. It's just,
Diverse too.
yeah, extremely diverse. I think that's extremely misunderstood about Houston. people outside of Houston, just how diverse Houston is. I kind of explain what's here and the food that's here and the cultures that are here. Most people are not here. Even my friends in San Diego, like, really, Houston. So no, it's just, there's a lot of untapped stuff out there.
That's true, yeah, because before coming to Houston, I was in Chicago. And I was taking some illustration classes, and in the class, when they all knew I'm from Saudi, like they were astonished. I'm like, oh, you don't look Saudi. Oh, they had this like huge stereotypical kind of understanding about what a Saudi woman should look like. And so when my husband told me like we're moving to Houston, I'm like, no way, they're gonna hate me. What are they gonna think of me? And then I had this like, oh, we're moving to the South. But then when I came here, I'm like, how open-minded everyone was, and I mean, I felt like more at home here because there's such a diverse community and everyone's very open-minded. So yeah, that was a very, positive thing that I experienced when I was at places. So yeah. Anyone else would like to add anything before I leave the floor up for questions? Yeah. Okay, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. Sure, in the chat. To work internationally, how can you get your foot in the door in other countries? Design network, for example, in Europe, the design firms want European citizens. Yep. Maybe we can let Aaron answer since you worked in France.
I never worked with a specific company in as a EU citizen, for example, so I don't know the rules. But I think the key is to start and plant seeds. And ultimately, it's building relationships. That's the first thing. So rather than thinking that there's a barrier to where you want to be, you start the process to getting there. And that's with anything in general, because, overcoming some of these things, you don't know what challenges will come through. And so starting to create the relationships and the network will start to give you a little bit more of an advantage than somebody who is a student in the EU, because they're going to sort of look first in their own sort of country or nearby countries. So I would definitely say narrow down the list of people that you want to connect with. And don't ask them for any, you're not looking for a job, you're just looking to build a relationship. As a student, you have an advantage because people want to teach and help. I definitely would use that as a way to kind of get the foot in the door. It sort of works like I had a disadvantage in terms of getting into one of my favorite design consultancies. So instead of just going to apply with my portfolio, I contacted the VP of innovation it was a very large design consultancy, contacted the VP of innovation, said, would you be my mentor? We had 2 phone calls. We built a relationship through 2 phone calls. And then when I applied, I said, this guy's my mentor. And basically they went to him and said, hey, do you know him? And he said, yes, he's a good guy. And that got me in the door. So sometimes it's who you know, basically.
Networking. Definitely something we all need to learn how to do, because it's not easy. I'm not a networking person. I was always like cocooned in my shell and never stepped out of my comfort zone. But
if you change the mindset, because I guess most of us aren't really good at networking because we're very focused on what we do. If you change it from networking to strategy, then it shifts how you do things, right? It's the same thing as doing research for any product. You're not afraid of like getting in front of people to get your information, what you need to accomplish for your project. So you are the project ultimately.
How about you, like when you came back here to the US, how did you find your experience of finding a job and working?
Well, yeah, it was very much related to what you said. It's like as a designer, yeah, you spend a lot of time kind of with your head down grinding and coming up with perfect things and getting married to like your ideas and feeling like your ideas are an extension of who you are. And you have to kind of step out of that and try to just be try to be like a friendly person, you know, and kind of keep conversations about other things when you meet people, when you go to networking events, don't always sort of make it obvious that you're looking for work. That's helped me a lot. It's just going a lot of things, meeting a lot of people outside of design. And,
Any other questions? Yes, Karen.
Would any of you guys have advice for anyone who's looking to go into industry and then working with businesses abroad or like company officials from other countries? Like, do you have any advice for designers who are looking to do this sort of thing?
Anyone want to, Erin, were you able to hear that?
I could barely, just advice for working abroad. What was the question?
Anyone who's interested in working, advice for someone who's interested in working abroad? Yeah.
I'm working with companies and just people abroad.
Working with companies and businesses abroad.
I mean, it's a complicated because again, it's relationship. Being a partner is that technically be anywhere in the world and have clients anywhere in the world. So you could be abroad and have clients in the United States. So that's not too bad of a thing. So I think the key is really trying to define what you want to do, right? You want to go as a consultant or look for a design consultancy or a firm. I think having a bit more direction in terms of like who and what and why will help give you more answers to your process.
Do you feel like sometimes it's hard to stand out when you are like in an international situation? I know like my dad, he has an accent, so in his work, he's normally like people normally just like not ignore him, but they want like more American. So I was just wondering, like, when you're kind of like pitching an idea, do you ever feel like people are like either like not really like, taking you seriously, or like how do you like get past that?
Yeah, I think well, for in my case, like, it was very difficult to find jobs here because I did like a huge hunt and search, and that's what kind of pushed me to pursue a degree to kind of get that networking opportunity and, you know, get that one foot in the door sort of thing. Yeah, so I think maybe there is some kind of, I don't know, for those who have worked in, you know, here, how would you?
I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but it happens. I mean, I've been told to walk into an interview and say, hello, I'm Eric from Trinidad. Because then the whole interview, they're not really listening to me, they listen to my voice and they kind of look at me, where you're from. I've been misunderstood tons of times, you know, stopped halfway through the interview and they ask, what language do you speak? English. So, and I have been to counselors, like career counselors, that have told me like kind of hide Trinidad on your resume a little bit. Don't have it at the forefront. So those things happen, but I'm not really sure what the perfect answer is to overcome
Do
that
you
kind
feel
of
like
stuff.
sometimes your work like speaks for you? Is that what you know?
Should I hope that's what I hope, but I don't know. I don't know. Honestly.
There's definitely, I don't know if there were some stereotypes that you had to break along the way.
I'll tell you a funny one, kind of a funny one. So, because I'm from the Caribbean, when I was in design school, my shop, this guy who ran the shop, I went to him once and he said, I said, can you 3D print my parts for me? This is my final project or my thesis project. And he said, he was like a very abrasive person. Like, when people went to ask him for something, it was like, went through it, that him, like, do this for me, no. So I went and asked him and he said something like, oh, you want to do all your work for you while you want to sit on a coconut tree and drink rum. I was like, my God, like, a little bit insulting, but I don't know, it's just so, laugh it off.
Yeah. Yeah, there was always this misconception, like, oh, you're Saudi, you have like an oil well in your backyard, and I'm like, okay. Yeah. Yes, Rebecca.
So like I moved here from India a while ago, but I've spent like my whole life kind of pretending that I'm not from there. Like it's very easy for me to not kind of associate with my culture because my family isn't really involved in that. And I've never felt the urge to like push that in my own design. And clearly, like what you're saying, if people are trying to hide where you're from, or it'll be easier to just kind of be that ethnically ambiguous. Do you feel that urge to like show where you're from in your design? Like, do you feel that need to bring it out? And if so, like, why do you think that's like the most beneficial, even though there's so many hurdles in that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, not to sound like corny or anything, but you can tell yourself in the best way when you're being kind of honest about who you are and what interests you, what's your background, and what makes you kind of passionate. Yeah, like Trinidad has like a very rich culture of carnival, dressing up and bright, color, things like that. So there's always like a want to do that. And really, like, even though I was told to do those things, I try not to do it. And I think how I overcame it, especially in San Diego, was I met this group of people who were like extremely fun. I mean, they were like not stereotypical San Diegans, but they love craft beer. And they were it was like working at like with a group of friends, like it was one of the best places I've ever worked. And I got that job by just kind of showing up there and chatting and becoming friends. And they invited me for a drink. And I guess that's one way of doing it.
Yeah, if you ask me, like I have my portfolio, my design portfolio from my undergrad. And if I compare it to like the 2 years that I've been here, that's like two completely different people. Which I think it's mainly because for me, it's like the relevance. You don't think that I didn't think that inducing or adding that cultural aspect would be relevant here. Doesn't speak to the majority of people. So that's why I shied away from doing that for the work that I was doing, for all the studio projects and stuff. And then to be fair, most of the projects we are like kind of given a prompt either like, to do something, and I didn't really want to force some kind of cultural aspect to it. So yeah, there wasn't really much opportunity for that. But I think in the future I will kind of figure out some blend of the kind of visual mesh that would work well. But there's always room for opportunity. So I always say add more of yourself in your work, and not to care, Aaron, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the more Americanized, born and raised here, so I didn't have the same challenges you had in these situations. However, I've worked with a lot of people. I've hired a lot of people in different countries, and ultimately, the only thing that matters, in my perspective, is your worth and what value you bring to that company. And now they might not understand it, so you have to be a good communicator to be able to explain to them the value that you'll bring to them. And at the end of the day, it's about value and your confidence to not allow these things to hold you back from thinking that these are things that are a disadvantage. And I think people will start to understand that and respect it, and those barriers start to kind of fade away. And as you said, I think once you've grown in terms of like understanding where you fit best, then you can start to create your own, you know, like how you sort of push more into your niche of, let's say, Arabic influence with your design, because people will start to look for that. They appreciate it. And I think that just takes a little time to kind of figure out how to, you know, carve that out. So I think it's a good way to kind of evolve.
Well said. So I think that's all the time we have. Wanted to thank everyone on the panel today for everything and all the information you provided and said, and giving us more, you know, of an insight in your background. And want to thank the CIDSA group again for doing all this. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.